Story time about how I caught my brother-in-law sniffing my underwear.
Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My husband and I are lucky enough to be wealthy business owners. Now, his brother, on the other hand, is not. He's an artist, believes he will be a big actor one day, which honestly, that's fine if you worked hard at it. He sits at home all the time and does something called self-tapes. He thinks he's just going to be discovered one day. Little backstory. My husband and I have been married for 2 years. Business we own requires him to travel a lot, and I do all of the admin work at home. My parents-in-law are very good people, but they are complete enablers to their lazy son. We've been paying his rent for 5 years. There came a time where they couldn't afford it anymore. They asked my husband and I if we could take him in. This caused a huge fight between my husband and I. I said no, and he said, "How can you say no to my family?" Here's the thing about my brother-in-law. I'll give it to him. He's a very good-looking guy. Could be a model. He wants to be an actor because he knows he's good-looking. He takes care of himself and literally lives in the gym. From the day he met me, the way he looked at me was just gross. He would comment on my different body parts. That's weird. The first time ever my husband and I got into a really big fight. Finally, I had to give in. You have to go to part 2.
Story time about how I caught my brother-in-law sniffing my underwear.
Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending it on Instagram. Now that my creepy brother-in-law was moving into my house, my husband and I were not getting along. He was upset that I didn't want his brother to live with us. I was upset that he would force his brother into our house. Like I said in part 1, my brother-in-law would make creepy comments about my body parts. For example, he told my husband that I had the prettiest neck, that it was a great neck to bite. Ew! My husband thought it was funny. The drama started as soon as he moved in. Ate a sandwich and made a huge mess. Did not clean it up. I had to ask him to clean. The first night he stayed with us, he brought over a girl at 3 in the morning and we could hear them doing stuff. My husband still did not get mad. A week later, I'm doing my laundry, and when I come downstairs, he's sniffing my dirty underwear. When he knew he messed up, he started apologizing right away and said it was a joke. And I kicked him out immediately. I told my husband, he got mad at me. And my parents-in-law too. My husband brought him back that very same night. So I packed a bag and went straight to my parents. I told him that I will leave him if he prefers his creepy brother over me. Guess what? My husband hasn't asked me to come back. He told me that we needed some time apart. I agree. Now I'm thinking divorce. What do you guys think? I should take the business.
Storytime about why situationships are the worst. So a little background information. It was the summer before my sophomore year in college and I was 19 years old and I've been talking to this guy who we're gonna call Brent. Now Brent and I have been talking for 3 months and at first everything was perfect. I really thought we were on the road to a healthy relationship. But then after the first month, everything went to shit. Every other week, he would become super distant. And when I say every other week, I mean it was like a set schedule. He would stop answering my text messages, stop returning my calls without any explanation at all. And then randomly, a week later, he would be like, "Sorry, I was going through some things. And I love the relationship that we have, and I wouldn't ever want to put any of my problems onto you." And he would constantly give me false hope of us being in a relationship. I must have been in a trance or something. Because when it came to this man, all my common sense went out the window. Like for part 2. Part 2 about why I hate situationships. So like I said, Brent would always give me false hope of us being together. He would always be like, "Right now it's just not the time. I want to make sure that everything's perfect." And I'm thinking, okay, but like what's not perfect right now? If anything, things are getting worse. Fast forward, the one day I get a picture from one of my friends of him and some girl sitting at the bar. And this just so happens to be one of those weeks where he was being super distant. So then I asked my friend, "Why did you send this to me?" And she was like, "Well, they've been acting like they've been in a relationship all night." So of course I do my detective work and I find her Instagram and I DM her and ask her if she knows Brent. And she DMs me back right away and she's like, "Yeah, he's my ex-boyfriend." So then I end up telling her about the situation. And she goes, "OMG, I'm so sorry. I come home every other week to take care of my grandma and usually him and I will spend the whole time together." So then she ends up confronting him about it. And then I get a text message from him and he was like, "I don't want to do this anymore. I realize that I'm still in love with my ex-girlfriend and I really want to try to get her back." So then I realized that he's literally been using me to distract himself from his ex-girlfriend the whole time.
My husband confessed that he's not attracted to me and that he has a side piece. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent me on Instagram. My husband is a complete nerd. He loves computers and he's a rocket scientist. A literal rocket scientist. He's always the smartest person in the room. He's the kind of person that reads 1 book a week. He's always trying to study and learn more. And frankly, he's like a nerdy looking guy. Because of all of this, I never thought that he would be the one to tell me that he was not attracted to me and that he had a side piece. And I'm sure you're wondering what I look like. I would say I'm a solid 6. Not always the prettiest in the room. I'm very fit and I love beauty, so it means I take care of myself. People are always surprised that I'm married to the man I'm married to. Because he doesn't really dress up or fix himself the way I do. Worst part is that I never noticed that anything had gone wrong. I thought we had a great relationship. Sure, it's not like there's fiery passion between us, but I still love him and care for him. 4 weeks ago, he came home from work in a really bad mood. And when I asked him, he just blew up in my face. He said, "Not attracted to you anymore and I'm seeing somebody else. But now she's ghosting me." He came home to complain that his side piece was ghosting him. And it gets worse. Part 2 is up. My husband confessed that he's not attracted to me and that he has a side piece. He confessed to me that he was having an affair. He wasn't even sad or upset for me. He was more upset that his side piece was ghosting him. So as I broke down in tears and fell to the floor, I knew we've been married for 10 years, he pulls out his phone and starts calling her. That's when I heard him whisper under his breath, "I'm taking back the apartment." That's when I blew up. I'm much taller and much stronger than him, so I pushed him down and pinned him to the floor, grabbed the phone from his hand, and forced him to tell me the truth. He had been renting an apartment for her, and he was giving her $4,000 a month. He and I always used to get in fights because he never wanted to pay for anything. He was the one that wanted the princess treatment. He always claimed that our finances should be separate, but I was the one paying for dinners and dates. I was so hurt, and when I asked him why he was giving her so much money instead of me, he said, "Because she's incredible, and I love her." That's when he started ranting about how everyone throughout our relationship always said that I was better looking, and that I was a stronger and fitter one, and that he was sick of being treated like that, and she treated him like a man. And what he said next is even worse. They had a child together. Part 3 is, my husband confessed that he has a kid with another woman. Not only had he given her an apartment and $4,000 a month, he also got her pregnant. One minute I was cooking dinner for him, waiting for him to come home. The next he's telling me that not only is he not attracted to me, but he has somebody else, and that he loves her. I was beyond devastated. He told me the reason why he was angry was because she was ignoring him, that he didn't deserve that treatment from her. When he finally took a second to look up at me, his face completely changed. He actually apologized and said that he understands how heartbroken I was. Then he told me that after years of people telling him that I was too good for him, he had had enough, and that's why he started the affair. He told me that I needed to let him go and that he wasn't good enough for me, that all he would ever do is continue breaking my heart, that I should find somebody else, blah blah blah. I didn't even have to kick him out. He grabbed his pajamas and toothbrush and left. I am so depressed. I wake up crying every day. That horrible feeling when you know something's wrong as soon as you wake up. And the worst part is, on Facebook they announced that they're engaged, so now he's asking for the divorce. My bestie thinks I shouldn't give it to him. Should I make his life harder, or should I just give him the divorce? What should I do?
Storytime, my boyfriend was a pathological liar. So a little background information. I was 17 when I started dating this guy who we're going to call Jack. And he was 17, about to turn 18. Or so I thought, because 3 months into our relationship, my mom somehow randomly found photos from his graduation in 2021. I was really hurt that he lied to me, and I planned on confronting him. But also in the back of my head, I knew that even when I went to confront him, I still wouldn't give a shit and I would still date him. So anyways, fast forward, I confront him. He lies about it, of course. And my mom was like my best friend, so anytime that she noticed anything weird, she would tell me about it, obviously. Like, my mom started realizing that he would try to make his life match mine as much as possible. For example, I had just moved to the suburbs, but I was originally from the city, and apparently so was he. I have 8 siblings, and apparently he does also, but I only met 3 of them. Fast forward, of course this leads me to develop serious trust issues, like for part 2. Part 2, my boyfriend was a pathological liar. So like I said, my mom started realizing that he would try to make his life as close to mine as possible, which led me to develop serious trust issues. Like, I would hate whenever he would go out with his friends to parties, hang out around girls, because he literally had such an issue with lying. So fast forward, our relationship turns into a long distance relationship, and then he lied about how he's going to some private school, and about how his dad is dying of cancer. And his siblings literally just played along with it. Like, I get, like, ride or die, but at the same time, your sibling is a pathological liar. Go get him some help. Anyway, so while he's at this, quote, private school, he was really away at college. Finally, I confront him one more time, and he admits that he lied. He's actually 19, which I knew was a lie again. He was actually 20 years old, and this went on for a long time. Eventually, I decided to leave him, but now I have super bad trust issues.
My husband caught me kissing his cousin on his wedding day. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. 7 years ago, I was dating my husband's cousin, and we had such a good time. Like, he was the boy of my dreams. And when I told him that I could see myself getting married to him, he said that he was not ready to commit, and that he would probably never get married. Because I don't play around, I broke up with him right there. 2 weeks later, I get a message on Facebook, and it is my future husband. But I knew who he was. I knew he was my ex's cousin. That's when he confessed to me that he had always had a crush on me. Now that I'm not with his cousin, if I could just give him a chance. He said, "Let me just take you out on one date." And I said yes. But really, I only said yes because I wanted to make my ex jealous. Is this wrong? Yes. But I had to do what I had to do. So I go out on a date with my future husband. And after all, he is amazing. He's even more attractive and more successful than my ex. So he and I started dating. We got married. Fast forward a couple of years. I had kept seeing my ex every now and then at family functions, but we never really stopped to talk or anything. Not until he announced his engagement. And I felt jealous. At the engagement party, my ex was trying to talk to me, and he started flirting. And I liked it. And he asked me to meet up for coffee, and we did. And there he flirted some more. Then we went out to dinner, and we kissed. It was a very quick, short kiss. But then the day of the wedding came. His wife and him were saying hi to everybody, but then he asked me to go take a walk. This is when he tried to mac on with me in a dark corner. My husband walked in, but my husband didn't overreact. All he said was stop that and come back to the wedding. It's been 2 weeks since the wedding and my husband still hasn't mentioned anything. Do you guys think my husband would let me have a side piece? I think I'm in love with both of them. What should I?
Storytime about how my whole class found my teacher's OF. So a little background information. I was 16 and in 10th grade, and my best friend Maya and I were walking in the hallway getting ready for first period. Now, even this early in the morning, the rumor was already going around that Miss J had an OF. Fast forward, Maya and I get to first period. 10 minutes after class started, Miss J put a problem up on the board. After she gave us a little bit of time, she was like, okay, who can solve this? And as she's about to call on someone, there was this guy, Jake, in my class, who was passing notes to this one girl, Jessica. And if you're wondering why they were passing notes, it's because we were not allowed to have phones in this class, of course. Anyway, so then Miss J is like, can you read that to the class, blah, 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 blah. And the note literally said, did you hear about Miss J's OF? She finished teaching the rest of our class, but we didn't see her for like 3 days after that. And I guess she wasn't fired because she had an OF. It was because there were students subscribed to it. And she knew about those students that were subscribed to it, and she didn't do anything about it.
My father-in-law is forcing my husband to break up with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. This is a 3-part story time, and I'm doing a full face of pink makeup today. My husband and I have been married for 2 years. Now, we did get married very, very young. By very young, I mean I was 18 and he was 19. When we started dating in high school, his dad was totally against the relationship. See, my husband was super popular. He played on the football team. All the girls chased him. He also played basketball and was perfect at everything he did. As you can imagine, was extremely strict with him. He was not even allowed to go out on weekends. Me, on the other hand, my parents are pretty much hippies. They let me do whatever I want. We're all very spiritual. My parents have full trust in me. Because of this, I make smart decisions. I actively seek my parents' advice. I even told my parents I lost my virginity when I did. And we had a big conversation about it. It was not dramatic. It was not like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. They just support me in everything I do. Now, my husband's parents are not the same. They tell him not to do a lot of things. They try to control him. So as we were dating in high school, his dad kept telling him to break up with me. He claimed that I was holding him back and that because of me, he spent less time training, which technically, yes, is true. But at the same time, you cannot stop your son from experiencing human relationships. In fact, he actually broke up with me for 2 weeks, but then we got back together in secret. Everything culminated when he asked me to marry him right after graduation. His parents were absolutely against it, but my parents were all for it. You guessed it, go to part 2. My father-in-law wants my husband to break up with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. This is a 3-part story time, and I'm doing a full face of pink makeup. When he asked me to marry him right out of high school, his parents absolutely freaked. They went to my parents' house and told me off for saying yes. In other words, they were completely blaming me for the whole thing, as if their own son didn't go buy a ring and ask me to marry him. He even did a beautiful proposal, which he had been planning for months. But at this point, his parents didn't even know that we were boyfriend and girlfriend. When they came to my house, his mom, my now mother-in-law, started crying and yelling at me. She told me that I was ruining their family, that I was trying to steal her son, and that all I really cared about was their money. By the way, my parents were middle class, but we were not destitute. His parents are very rich. They own several businesses. But of course, I'm not after their money. That's when they said that if we did end up getting married, I would have to sign a prenup. And I said, yeah, I want to marry him because I'm in love. At this point, his parents knew they couldn't stop us. We were going to get married with or without their approval. But thankfully, his parents came around and let us get married. We had a quaint, small wedding. It was so magical. But his parents wanted him to go to college to play football. In other words, they wanted him to be the next Tom Brady. They made him train for hours, and they didn't even let us live together for the first year we were married. And because they were supporting him, he couldn't say no. They had us on a schedule. Could only see him for about 2 to 3 hours a day. And we were married. 2 years later, he's playing for a football team. But his parents keep thinking that I'm dragging him down. So now they're trying to convince him to leave me. Go to part 3. My father-in-law is trying to convince my husband to divorce me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, and this is the final part of the 3-part story time. I'm doing a full face of pink makeup. After a year of us being married, his parents did not allow us to live together because he needed to focus on football. So obviously, I was living with my parents. I was focusing on my own studies, but his parents did allow us to see each other 2 to 3 hours a day. Now, you might think my husband is a total pushover, but let me explain something. His parents paid for all of his training and his entire college tuition. They gave him the best of everything. He got sports massages every single day. They even installed a cold plunge in their backyard. They also had a full gym setup where he and his teammates would go work out every single day. in their house. Obviously, he did not have time for little old me. After a year of this, I couldn't take anymore. I wanted to be with my husband. So I gave him an ultimatum. Daddy tell his parents that he and I wanted to live together. That's all I wanted. I was even willing to pay for half of the rent. And he told his parents, they said fine. And they bought us a house. Obviously under my husband's name, not mine. Fast forward another year up until now. I've heard his dad tell him on several occasions that he needs to divorce me. That he could find a much prettier wife once he becomes bigger in the NFL. And I walked in on his mom telling him that maybe I can't even have kids. And that he should have me checked. My parents-in-law hate me. I sometimes feel like I am holding him back. They make us miserable. My parents think I should just walk away from the marriage. But I'm too in love. Should I confront my parents-in-law? Help me think of what I should say to them.
Storytime about why my best friend cut me off. So a little background information, I was 24 and I had a full-time job as a nurse. And I had been best friends with this girl since we were in 7th grade. As soon as she turned 21, she got married, had a kid. And just like any young tragic love story, her boyfriend, who was way older than her, left her for some girl who just turned 18. So I ended up letting her move in with me. She had too much pride to go back to her mom's house. I ended up kicking her out of my house though, because she would have random guys over 24/7 and she would smoke you know what in my house. So I had the cops called on me 24/7 because my neighbors could smell it. So fast forward to now, she's living with her mom. Her and I got over that fight and she decided that she wanted to go to college. I was so proud of her, but she asked me if I could watch her kid when she had to go into school because she was doing mostly online. So of course I said yes, I wanted her to succeed. Like for part 2. Part 2 about why my best friend cut me off. So like I said, she finally decided to go to college. Me being super happy for her, I would watch her kid whenever she would have to go into school. Well, the one night I'm making dinner and her kid's in the living room, I'm in the kitchen, and I go into the living room to tell him that dinner is ready. And I see my dog backed up into a corner and him with a fire poker, literally poking my dog. I wouldn't even call it poking, he was pretty much trying to stab my dog. My dog has its ears back, it's shaking with anxiety. So I go over and I rip it out of his hands and I smack his fingers. And I tell him, we do not do that to the dog. Like, what is wrong with you? So my friend comes, picks him up. A few days later, she comes to drop him off again. And she says, hey, can I talk to you? I already knew what it was about, so I was expecting this. She was like, Gavin told me that you hit him last time he was here. And I was like, yeah, he pretty much was stabbing my dog. And then she's like, oh, well, you know, he doesn't mean any harm. He plays with the dogs like that at home. Like, okay, sis,
my husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimer, not my Storytime, instead of me on Instagram. My husband and I have a really toxic relationship. When he and I first started dating, I was extremely jealous. I would instigate fights almost every single day. Now that we're married, I'm definitely less jealous. But he's always been jealous throughout our relationship. He tries to control everything I do, down to the way I dress and even the people I can or cannot hang out with. He even insisted that I quit my job, which I did. He's invested a lot in Tesla and crypto, so he makes a lot of money without having to leave the house. Which, yes, is totally amazing, but that means he and I are together all the time. And with his jealousy, sometimes I just can't stand him. I've tried to help him with his jealousy because I used to be in that place. And when I try to talk to him about it, he just gets mad at me. Whenever he sees that I post something on Instagram, he gets angry. He says that I'm looking for attention, which of course I am, but not from guys. Everyone posts on social media because they want to show off their life. A little on my sister. We're identical twins, and we're really, really close. Unfortunately, my sister got laid off from her job last year. That's when she decided to start her OnlyFriends. I support her in everything she wants to do. She's actually making really good money from it, so she's really happy about it. A few days ago, I got on my husband's phone to look for something. When I see my sister's pictures, part 2 is up. My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimers are not my Storytime, it's not me on Instagram. A few days ago, I got on my husband's phone to transfer some money from his account to mine. When I started looking for his banking app, I noticed something else on his screen. I had never seen this before, so I clicked on it. And as soon as I opened it, I see my sister's pictures. And I knew it was her OnlyFriends right away. By the way, I had never told my husband that my sister had an OnlyFriends. She wouldn't even post about it on her social media. So the fact that he found it makes me believe that he had my phone bugged or something. But here's the thing. He was using a different name for his account. So it was likely that my sister did not know it was him. From there, I could see that he was following a bunch of other girls. And when I went to their messages, he had paid over hundreds of dollars every single day to all of these girls. Can you imagine how much money that is? My husband came into the room and saw me on his phone. Of course, he didn't freak out because he never thought that I would find it. But I confronted him right away. But he didn't even flinch. He said he had every right to go on OnlyFans because it was the same thing as going to any website. I told him to at least unfollow my sister and he said that he wouldn't. He said he loved it because it was like watching me do naughty things. Then he said, isn't this better than cheating on you? I was flabbergasted. Part 3 is up. Husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimers is not my Storytime, it's not me on Instagram. That's when he told me that it was better than him cheating on me. And I was shocked. I couldn't think of anything else to say, so I threatened him. I told him that if he didn't stop following my sister, that I would start my own OnlyFriends account. Like I said, he's really jealous. So he went berserk. He ripped my phone out of my hand and threw it against the wall. Then he told me that the only reason he asked me to quit my job was so that I wouldn't be around other men. By the way, I used to be a personal trainer, and most of the time I would only train women. I told him that my sister and I wouldn't be comfortable with him looking at our OnlyFriends. It was so disturbing. Oh, and I also told him that he needed to stop controlling me, and that I could buy my own phone with my own money and start my own account. Then he came to his senses and started to apologize. And I also told him that I was suspecting that he bugged my phone, and that he was receiving my messages, because there was no other way he could have found out about my sister's account. Then he calmed down and explained things to me. He said that he had bugged my phone a few months ago because I was posting too much on Instagram and it was bothering him. So basically, he has access to my DMs and all my text messages. Promised to stop doing that and that he would buy me a new phone. And that's how he found out about my sister's OnlyFriends. He said he only signed up out of curiosity, and that he only wanted to see a few pictures and then delete it. But the more he kept looking at her pictures, the more he would think of me, and that it turned him on. And in front of me, he deactivated his account and deleted everything. He promised me that he would never do that again. Of course, I haven't forgiven him though. Haven't even spoken to him in days. But every time he sees me, he tries to kiss me and hug me. And when I push him away, he tries even harder. Honestly, I think he likes it. I do believe that he's secretly addicted to drama and that he thrives on it. I'm planning on never telling my sister about it. I don't think she'd feel comfortable around him ever again. I mean, I don't feel comfortable around him right now. I'm so confused and I don't know if I should leave him or not. He's so controlling all the time. What should I do?
Story time. My boyfriend cheated on me with the girl best friend. So a little background information. I was 17 and a junior in high school, and my boyfriend and I had been dating for a year. But just a little backstory about when we got together. So there were definitely some red flags that I missed, okay? One of them being that he had a girl best friend. And I don't care what y'all have to say if that makes me insecure or what, but coming from someone who has been the girl best friend, I knew this was not good at all. Especially whenever we first started dating and she was still being super friendly with him, meaning she would hold his hand, she would hang on him 24/7. And when I told him I was super uncomfortable with that and I felt like there needed to be some boundaries, he was like, yeah, I told you what it was whenever we got together. So if you don't like that, then just break up with me. Looking back on it now, that was also a red flag, because I feel like he was telling me to break up with him so that way he didn't have to break up with me, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend cheated on me with the girl best friend. So like I said, she would still hang all over him, and he pretty much told me, if you don't like that, then you can leave. Obviously, I did not want to leave because I liked him and he was my boyfriend. So I just kept putting up with it, and eventually, we got 6 months into our relationship. So at that point, I'm thinking maybe I have a little bit more authority, to be like, hey, I don't like the way that she acts around you. You guys can't hang out like that anymore. And they would hang out alone together. He would take her to dinner. I literally tried telling him that the stuff that they do together is relationship stuff. And he was like, that's not true at all, because we did all of this stuff before you and I even got together. So anyways, like I said, 6 months in, I'm like, hey, I don't like the way that you guys are hanging around each other. Once again, he gives me the same excuse. So he pretty much said that he didn't care. And the one night him and I were supposed to hang out, but he canceled on me last minute. And her and I didn't get along, and she never Snapchatted me before, but then I get a Snapchat of her and him making out at his house.
Story time about how my mom found out my dad had a whole other family, and then he abandoned her with 5 kids. Yes, this is my mama's story time. I'm gonna try not to cry. My mama and specimen donor met when they were super young. They got married when she was 21 and she got pregnant at 22. And then they had 4 more children. My brother and I are twins and we're the babies of the family. Now, when my brother and I were a year old, my mom started noticing some wacky stuff. Specimen donor was out all hours of the night because he had business here and there. And by the way, my mom is raising 5 children, including 2 newborn twins. Thankfully, she had the help of my sister. At the time, she was already 15, so there's a huge age gap between her and I. Oh my god, I'm already losing it. Shout out to my amazing sister because she helped raise me and my siblings. In fact, when I wanted to go out to a party or something, my mom would tell me to go ask my sister for permission because she always said no to everything. So one day my mom confronts specimen donor. This is when he confesses that he had gotten someone else pregnant. Not only was she pregnant, she'd already had another kid of his, and that he was gonna go live with his new family. My mama kicked him right out. She enrolled herself in night school and became a lawyer. She took over my grandpa's dying law office, and she is now one of the most recognized lawyers in all of Central America. Thank you, Kosas, for working with me on this video. I seriously love you guys. And to all the mamas out there working hard, you are seen and you are loved. Bye.
Part 2 about how I found out that my boyfriend was cheating on me with his homeboy. So like I said, the one time I see them holding hands under the table, and whenever I asked my boyfriend why he was doing that, he was like, oh, it's because my best friend has social anxiety. And I'm like, okay. And then fast forward, we're all at this party and I see them kissing. And when I confronted him about it, he was like, oh, like we just like to play pranks like that sometimes.
And I believed him because I really didn't think that my boyfriend was cheating on me with his homeboy. So fast forward to his birthday. I wanted to surprise him, so I went to his house, and to my shock, I see Kevin hooking up with his best friend. And when I confronted him about it, he was like, no, like, I swear I'm straight, da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, bro, why are you lying to me? Like, there's no reason to lie anymore. I caught you. So at that point, I literally just left his house and I blocked him, and I even begged my parents to let me move schools because I was so embarrassed. And from now on, I learned to not trust guys who are too close to their friends. Like, any guy who chooses their friend over me now is sus.
My husband forced me to watch him doing it with another woman. Disclaimer is not my story time, send me on Instagram. I'm an overweight 28-year-old. My husband hates the fact that I'm fat. He and I dated for 2 years before he asked me to marry him. At this time, everything was pretty much okay. We had a lot of fun together, we were basically best friends. But after we got married, I ended up gaining some weight. Mostly because I wasn't really taking care of myself, and because I've never cared about gaining weight or not. But to my husband, this is horrible. After I gained 20 pounds, he started saying things like, "You're starting to look different and I don't like it. I can see your belly when we're having sex." And I gained another 20 pounds. And this is when he was really grossed out. If I asked him for a towel while I was showering, he would just throw it at me. Because apparently the sight of my naked body disgusted him. After a few weeks, I asked him to stop talking to me that way, and he said that he wouldn't because he didn't marry a fat woman. But I think he should love me no matter what. Even if I'm fat or skinny, he should still love me. He got to the point where he wouldn't even touch me or kiss me good morning or good night. And we used to have a pretty active sex life. Things got way worse. He started not coming home. Part 2 is up.
Okay, part 2. So like I said, I look in the mirror and I see myself smiling back at me. And that's whenever everything went south so quick. I sat on the bed, tried to pull myself together because I didn't want to make a fucking scene in front of everybody. But then I got caught in this fucking loop. And if you don't know what the loop is, then I'm going to tell you what it is. It's basically where you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. And then I started looking around at everybody and it looked like their faces were melting. One of my friends got up off his chair, walked to the other side of the room, and I watched him do that. But when I looked back over at the fucking chair, he was still sitting there. So I looked at my one friend that was sober, who I was actually really close with, and I think he saw the look in my eye and he was like, "Do you want to leave now?" And I just shook my head, yeah, like I could not deal with that shit anymore. So we go to his car and then we drive to my boyfriend's house. Because I could not go home. I would have got crucified. Well, we get in the house and as soon as his mom sees me, she knows that something's wrong. Like for part 3.